What people? Oncologists?
No, hunkies. You find things.
So far in our endless search for the greatest House MD episode, we've analyzed and broken down 6 different storylines, with Broken in 3 stories, fighting for the top spot. We've looked at early episodes, late season 1s, and a bunch in between. I've tried to pick a good mixture of fan favorites, less popular ones, and of course, the fan favorite heavy hitters. In this amalgamation of House episode debauchery, I'd be doing us all a disservice if we didn't at least talk about the episode that started it all, the pilot. I've talked about this before, but I've always given pilot episodes a chance, no matter the show. You get one shot to hook me with your premise, and you'd better give it your all.
It's impressive. You're actually smarter than you look.
I mean, I think this is fair. That's what pilots are for. Make me interested in the world you've created and make me beg for more. If we're objectively looking at House episodes and attempting to crown the greatest one, we have to look at the pilot. Without much further ado, let's take a trip down memory lane and ask, is the House pilot the greatest episode of the show? The pilot premiered on November 16th, 2004. The episode opens with a teaser of a woman named Rebecca Adler, who, while teaching a kindergarten class, loses the ability to speak.
Yeah, that's not funny.
It then cuts to our first shot of the hospital, showing our very first recurring character, Wilson. God damn, you look young. The opening scene at PPTH, or Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital, is Wilson walking and talking to House down a hospital hallway. In about 30 seconds, they do a pretty massive exposition dump. They go over House using a cane, being a diagnostician, his specialty being infectious diseases, how he has a team of overqualified doctors working for him, how Wilson is an oncologist, House pops pills. In this conversation, Wilson asks House to take Rebecca's case because she's his cousin. We learn later this is not true because
Everybody poops.
damn it, I got the wrong one again.
Everybody lies.
House replies with this.
Brain tumor. She's gonna die. Boring.
Alright, I guess that's it, guys. Also, what is this music? Is this Jurassic Park? After they realize Rebecca does not have a tumor, they decide to do an MRI. And we meet Cuddy, House's boss, who rails against House for not doing his obligated free clinic hours downstairs. Not only does she give him a solid earful, but she blocks House's team from doing the MRI on Rebecca. This leads House to barge into Cuddy's office and do something we don't get to see that often as the show moves forward. Yell, and to protect the patient, no less.
I'm angry! You're risking a patient's life.
You shut up! I'm so fucking scared right now, you shut up!
Cuddy holds firm on denying the MRI, but House tells his team to do it anyway.
Do the MRI. She folded. You better love this cousin a whole lot.
Oh look, the House medical accuracy is off to a strong start in the pilot. 3 overqualified doctors sitting in on an MRI. House is nowhere to be found as well, setting up the theme of how he doesn't meet his patients. Robert Chase, Allison Cameron, and Eric Foreman. No, not that Eric Foreman. It's a good thing they were there, as Rebecca goes into anaphylactic shock from a drug used during the MRI, and it forces House's team to save her life. House then tells his team to get a better history on Rebecca, and to go to the classroom to look for environmental factors while they start her on steroids. Again, Cuddy tells House to cease and desist.
Why are you giving Adler steroids?
That's what you do with patients. You give them medicine.
You don't prescribe medicine based on guess.
But realized the steroids actually helped her? Oops.
Whoops.
Wilson then examines Rebecca and assuages her desire to meet House in person. Unfortunately, during the exam, she loses her vision. It almost dies. House orders his team to stop all treatment and let her die, to see how fast she declines, to help them figure out whose theory is correct. House goes back to mocking people during clinic duty, while Foreman and Cameron visit Rebecca's house. During this visit, they have a conversation about why House hired them. And while searching this house, no, not that house, they find expired ham, in her refrigerator, which leads House to diagnose Rebecca with a tapeworm. Unfortunately, as they realize this, Rebecca decides to stop all treatment.
I was just with her. She doesn't want any more treatments. She doesn't want any more experiments. She wants to go home and die.
House knows that this is the time that he has to finally visit her. And this is still one of my favorite scenes from the show.
I'm Dr. House.
It's good to meet
You're
you.
being an idiot.
He draws on his own experience of leg pain to convince her to be treated. He empathizes and tries to persuade her to live.
I just want to die with a little dignity.
There's no such thing. We can live with dignity, we can't die with it.
And my favorite part of all of this is that when she says no still, he respects it and walks away. It's not until Chase thinks of a unique way to prove to her that she actually has tapeworms that she listens and survives. Damn, Chase, way to go.
You make me all flustered.
After Rebecca is given 40 cc's of annoying, disease-ridden child hugs, Cameron then confronts House about why he hired her, and House explains the reason for choosing each team member.
You hired a black guy because he had a juvenile record.
I hired Chase because his dad made a phone call. And I hired you because you are extremely pretty.
He definitely had a good hiring process here.
You are creepy as shit.
The episode ends with House and Wilson hanging out in the clinic, and House confronts Wilson about why he lied.
You said she was your cousin. Why would you lie?
It got you to take the case.
Wilson asks House if he's never lied ever.
I never lie.
It's false. No way. Not this time. Not this time. No.
Let's start with what works about this pilot, and why it's a solid entry in the House cinematic universe. As a pilot, many things are established throughout this episode we come to know as show norms. Norms that remain throughout pretty much the entire show, which is impressive to say the least. The unique inner body CGI shots, House staying away from patients, his caustic wit, fumbling diagnoses, House's team visiting the scene of the crime, so to speak, lightning-fast Sherlock diagnoses.
Lady back there who made your egg salad sandwich. Her eyes look glassy. Did you notice that? And the sign in the bathroom says that employees must wash after using the facilities, but I figured that somebody who wipes snot on a sleeve isn't hyper-concerned about sanitary conditions.
Heard enough.
Neglecting clinic duty, watching soaps. I'm also impressed how the show formula didn't really change that much over the 8-season run. It seems like David Shore really got the narrative structure right from the jump, and that's quite rare for most pilots. And while this episode's viewership was low compared to other better pilots, or even other shows airing at the time, critic ratings are pretty high, many quoting it as their favorite episode, including Robert Sean Leonard, stating he loves the episode for its simplicity and lack of sensationalist plot elements. Later episodes sometimes feel like they kinda jump the shark, or jump the pool. The pilot also established House MD as a very character-driven show, unlike other medical mysteries or thrillers. It doesn't depend so much on moving a narrative along fast, as it does focus more on highlighting the difference in characters and disagreements between doctors and patients. Yes, it does talk about evidence, and findings that lead to diagnoses and cures, etc., but I think it's clear the characters are what really drive this show. I also love how House being in the background was really highlighted subtly in a lot of the early scenes. House keeping his patients at a distance reduces his bias, and over the course of the show, we see him do this more and more, but the pilot really established this. As the show moves on, his side characters feel a little more useless.
I just need a good friend.
But in the pilot, it's very clear he needs them, not just because they're fun to torture, but because they test him, and think of ideas he sometimes can't. The pilot also just kind of feels different. I'm trying to put my finger on exactly what this is, but House just feels more normal, more relatable. I think he just feels like more of a person in this episode. He acts more like an introverted doctor might, not making offensive jokes at every turn, not trying to push people away or harass everybody that comes in arm's length. I get why they slowly made the change over time, to be funnier and more dramatic, which I guess makes for better TV. But I really like this more tame version of House. and I try to imagine what season 4 or 5 or even 6 would have been like with this type of house. All in all, the pilot episode is a straightforward story with an enigmatic lead doctor who is introverted without being shy, outspoken without being disrespectful, intelligent without being too unrealistic. A doctor working with other brilliant doctors who support him without outshining him. This sounds great. Should we stop here? The biggest thing that stands out most for me about the pilot that really annoys me is the awful lighting and color scheme. Bryan Singer decided to use an orange hue lens for the pilot, and it gives every scene this awful glow, like someone is shining a spotlight through Garfield's ass cheeks. Season 1 as a whole had pretty terrible lighting. I don't necessarily know all the background on this, if they just chose to do it this way, or they had bad people they hired to set up lighting in the studio, but it's really noticeable, especially in the pilot. As the show moves forward, especially into season 2, it does get better, but this is really distracting in this episode, and it just looks really off-putting. Some shots look okay, I guess, in the pilot, like this one, which is kind of hilarious because she's literally surrounded by white fucking light. From a technical standpoint, there's also a handful of errors in the pilot. Adler's sweater, switching colors, some continuity errors, and several medical errors, like incorrect diagnoses, incorrect medications prescribed. The music selection also really stands out in this episode, and I do not mean that in a good way.
We learned something else.
I mean, is this shit just me? It sounds like the Avengers are assembling on the roof. Now, I'm not gonna just sit here and harp on all the goofs and odd stylistic choices, because every show's got them if you look hard enough. The pilot episode is always just a way for a show to find its footing, discover what works, and move forward with momentum. I can at least talk about what I don't think works about this pilot beyond technical aspects and choices, especially as this is everybody's intro to this series. If you missed out on this incredible show because you didn't like the pilot, that's definitely unfortunate. Looking at this episode through the lens of a pilot episode, I've got to compare it to other pilots I loved. The whole point of a pilot is to give you a big cliffhanger that forces you to watch. Breaking Bad, Lost, Dexter. These shows set up their universes very quickly and get you really hooked. Now, House, I think, is definitely a weaker than average pilot. We meet the characters and learn the premise, but that's kind of it. Nothing really happens. No huge overarching conflict. No substantial change. No big universe that's set up and then turned on its head. It's just a doctor who's smart, kind of being an asshole. I can see why people might watch this episode and go, eh. And while people loved House as character from the start, I don't know if this episode really stands out among other pilots or even other House episodes. So where does this one fall on the scale? I've praised this episode for its simplicity and subtlety, but I don't know if it's interesting or unique enough, technical issues aside, or one I'd even watch if I really had an itch to watch the show again. It's fun to see our first look at the characters, but objectively, this is far from the best House episode.